So don't touch your face.
Hi,
Sorry, I forgot about that.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the last webinar of the NCLA series for this school year. We will resume in August. So thank you for joining us. This is being recorded, so please feel free to share this out with friends, family, people who will benefit from this who weren't able to join us in person. And I will share out our link to our YouTube channel where this will be posted later today. And for those of you who are not who do not know me, I'm Rachael Mann. I'm the Director of Member Engagement for NCLA. And I am just excited to have our guests with us today. I'll introduce them in a moment, but I do want to mention that you probably saw Dr. Kevin Fleming as one of our panelists today. And I received a message from him this morning that he's not going to be able to join us. He sends his regrets and has a medical emergency that he's tending to, which we can all relate to, right? But first, I'm going to start with the first question and then introduce our first panelist. But the first question for today is, what are the projected changes in the workforce? And we're going to start with Josh Davies, who is coming to us from Denver, Colorado. He's the Chief Executive Officer for the Center for Work Ethic Development. Josh and I have known each other for several years, and this is our first time meeting together virtually, but excited to still be able to connect in this way. So Josh, go ahead and share with us, what are the projected changes that we see in the workforce?
Yeah, I think the best way to look at this, Rachel, is not that we know what the future of the workforce is going to look like, because that really no one has any idea. It's hilarious to look back. If you were to ask someone in 2010, like, hey, what's an Uber driver? What's an Instagram influencer, right? They're going to be like, I don't even know what you're talking about, right? And, the number of people who are working those jobs, right? So we don't know what we don't know. But what we do know is what's going to be changing in the workforce, right? We do know that there are entire industries that are going to be completely reshaped. One of the scary things as I researched this, one of the things I've really looked at is the impact of the first 6 months of 2020 and the coronavirus pandemic. And what it's really had more than anything else is an accelerant on the changing nature of the workforce. So here's the scary part. It's estimated, looking through some data from the University of Chicago, of the 37 million jobs that have been lost so far, it's estimated that 47% of those jobs will never come back. These are jobs that will be permanently eliminated. And the scary part is when you look at those jobs, they're disproportionately in low-wage professions, typically with folks who have non-transferable skills. And so that part's going to be a real interesting challenge. But what I think the pandemic has also proven to us is one of the key things that the future will have in store, and that is human connectivity. I think there's been a real longing, and people are really seeing the value of human connection. And really, when you look at where the jobs of the future are going to be, I think we're going to find more and more jobs that are around this idea of how do we connect with people? How do we make that human touch? And I see it as some jobs go away: retail, food service, leisure and hospitality, right? Just certain things that are just not going to be there. What are going to be the ones eventually? It'll be around people. That's what we see from the research. That's what's out there right now.
Oh, well, yes. That's such a great point in thinking about this whole sense of just terms, that jobs that we had no clue would be around. And it's just going to be amazing to see how exponentially that will be in the future. And we also have with us Larissa Schelkin, who is coming to us from Boston, Massachusetts. She's the CEO and founder of Global STEM Education Center. She's also an author and speaker. And all of us in the CTE community know that STEM is CTE and the two are interconnected. Welcome, Larissa. And what are your thoughts on the projected changes in the workforce?
Sure. Before I will add my 2 cents to this interesting discussion, I would like to acknowledge all of you joining this webinar, and I see familiar faces, and my gratitude to my colleagues and friends at MAVA, and I see Peter and probably Kevin somewhere. So thank you for really igniting the interest in all of these topics and bringing me into career technical education years ago. So thank you to my friends and colleagues in career and technical education. So what are those projected changes in the workforce? You probably know, if you read my bio, I also had the privilege to serve on Massachusetts Employment and Workforce Development Board for 9 years. So we discussed this year in and year out, and there was a lot of strategic changes, strategic planning going on at Massachusetts. It was very interesting. If you interested, you can look it up online, it's available. So 3 points I would like to add to Josh, very passionate beginning of the discussion. So the changes in the workforce will be based on 3 sort of major ideas or developments, should I say. So first of all, changes in demographic composition of the whole population. So you probably know demographics is changing. I'm not going to a full discussion of demographical changes, but you know what it is that we're facing. Second, it's a changing labor market choices. So we're facing a significant shift in what choices in labor market we have. So, and the rise of individual choice with million job postings available just click away, so to speak. In our days when we were looking for a job, it was not always possible. So the process looked different, and this will also have some effect on the workforce. And of course, the technological revolution. So, and the result of rapid technological change, all companies, all employers from all over the spectrum, they will have faster and they will face shorter business cycle. So another very important point is you probably know, with the virtual life that we all switch to now, global competition we will be facing regardless where your actually home base is. You can work from home and still face a global competition. So that's my 2 cents. Back to you, Rachel.
And that's such a great point about this whole seeing that a distributed workforce, a remote workforce, it works. And in a lot of ways, it's making our lives better. It's less pollution in the world. It's less time spent in traffic. Some benefits to that. So, Josh, you mentioned a little bit about how the last few months of 2020, no one's ever going to forget 2020. That has a whole new meaning. But what are some additional things that we're going to see as we think about the changes in the workforce based upon this disruption that we've experienced?
Yeah, well, Larissa, thank you for bringing that up. I mean, one of the things that I think really we found is this idea of this remote workplace, right? That people don't have to physically be in an office. Not only are there ways to help people still connect, like, I don't know, a Zoom meeting with 50 of your favorite friends from all around the country, but also this idea that you can collaborate with people all over the world, right? And that's really powerful. But at the same time, that's dangerous for the US market. And for us, we need to be really aware, because from a dollars and cents perspective, it's a lot cheaper typically to hire people from other parts of the world than it is to hire local American talent. And so we're gonna really have to differentiate and talk about added value. What are we gonna be able to develop in our students in this virtual world to allow them to compete in this global marketplace, where if they just become a commodity, we'll lose. And I think that's one important thing to take a look at from sort of this pandemic. And just as a quick side note, Rachel, I don't even want to know what July has in store. Like, every month I'm like, it can't get crazier than this. And then the next month happens. I think also what's important, and to kind of to take the events of the coronavirus pandemic and also at the same time, a lot of the social justice movement that's been happening, I think one of the key things that we're looking at, especially in CTE, is a way to take advantage of our programs to improve diversity, to improve our ability to draw those different students who may either have been overlooked, who don't think that school is for them, but also high achievers, people who I didn't think before that a CTE class was the direction they wanted to go, or didn't see how it would help them in this world, and bring together this real diverse space. Right? STEM is so important, not just because STEM is important, but because we have to have diversity in STEM. Right? There's only so many white dudes we can have before we've already sort of gotten everything we can get out of a white dude, right? Let's get some more different opinions. Let's get some different life experiences and bring that into that world. And I think that is one of the things that 2020, kind of these two things coming together, I think can really help us in our programs.
And Larissa, Josh, thank you so much for that, because that is such an important piece, and we're just seeing so many changes already, and it really does take all of us to ensure that that those changes that are for good, that they don't stop. That it's not something we forget about when people aren't, protesting. It's something that we need to remember at all times. And Larissa, if you'd like to chime in on that one.
Sure. It gives me a nice opportunity to remind today is International Women in Engineering Day. And this morning started with, I had two other presentations this morning with presidents of different universities. And I was really privileged to participate in International Women in Engineering with Scotland, Ireland, UK group, and we talked about specific engineering topics and CTE as well. So
I have to add that to my calendar, Larissa. I do not have International Women in Engineering Day on my calendar. It will be added when we get out of here.
Yes, and by training, I am a professional petroleum engineer, which means chemical engineering and refineries, and petroleum, oil and gas, and mechanical engineering. So, and I can talk hours about this, maybe some other day, some other webinar. But anyway, yes, I agree with passionate Josh discussion on this topic, and I think you covered it all. Do you want to move to the next question that we are proceeding with this webinar?
Absolutely. And one of my favorite thought leaders on the future of the world around us, I really enjoy his books. If you haven't heard of him, check him out, Peter Diamandis. But he's a futurist and a thought leader, and he frequently says that the biggest problems in the world are the biggest business and marketing opportunities. What do you see as the biggest problems and challenges that the generation that's in our classrooms, that they'll be tasked for solving? They're going to be creating the future reality. What are those problems that they're going to be tackling?
Sure, and thank you for this great question. And I am truly privileged to be part of Peter Diamandis' network, and I stay in touch with the work that he does since I believe about 8 or 9 years now. So I was privileged to participate in his talks here at MIT and things of that nature. And if you haven't read his books, or if you not watching his presentations online, I would also join Rachel encouraging you to do that. So who is in it's related to the demographical changes, and just a quick reminder to myself and to all of you. So the first internet in the US schools, I looked in the statistics, was 35% of US schools in 1994 had access to internet. So who are the students who born in 1994? They are 26 years old now. So they already born when the internet, as we know it, already existed. And even more, the fifth graders today, born when the first iPad was already in our hands. So these are students who are representing and really born into different reality. I'm not saying technology defines it all, but in many regards it does. So Peter Diamandis is really leading a number of developments in the world. And basically, he answers to your question, Rachel, that the students today in our classrooms, they will be facing the challenges of solving hunger issue, literacy, and energy problems. And generally speaking, he groups these problems in sustainability, health, security, and the joy of living. So from engineering perspective, and you probably heard of it, if not, just check them on the US Academy website. So the students who are in our classrooms today, they are the ones we are passing the torch with all of these challenging problems. They will be working on making solar energy affordable. They will be trying to find solution to capture and store carbon dioxide. They will be trying to figure out how we can provide access to all for clean water and clean air. They will be the one who would advance health informatics. It started nowadays with all data and big data, but this is really a huge issue. They will be the one who will be engineering better medicine. And remembering in the COVID-19 days couldn't be more, more important than now. They will be the one who will be preventing nuclear terror. They will be the one to reverse engineering the brain. They will be enhancing virtual reality. They will be securing cyberspace. And it's very important for us to really pass the torch to future educators. Believe it or not, among the students who you have today in your classrooms, number of them will become educators. And they are looking up to us and to all of you what it really means to be the best educator. So they will be the one who will advance personalized learning and career technical education in the future. Back to you. Go ahead, Josh.
So after they've solved every problem in the world, Larissa, I don't know what they get done to do next. But one of the things I do want to point out, though, is you talk about, in the 1990s, 55% of schools had internet. What the last 6 months have also reminded us is about, and I would say not only reminded us, exacerbated the digital divide in America. When you look at where we are and what we need to be cognizant of, especially as educators, right, is that not everyone has high-speed Wi-Fi. Not everyone has their own laptop, right? It may be a family where they have a computer and they have a Wi-Fi, but they have one laptop for mom, dad, and the 3 kids. And when you're all supposed to be online all day long, how do you handle that, right? We have to be very aware that in this time where we talk about remote learning and we talk about the opportunities and how we can take advantage of this, that what we're really doing is, unfortunately, deepening the chasm between people who have access to technology and then further removing the opportunities for those that don't. And we have to figure out how we can help conquer that for all of our students, not just CTE. But I think we're in a unique place because of the nature of what we do and how we can address that. So it's just one of those things to consider as we're solving every problem in the world.
Agree, 100%.
Well, and with that, one of the things that Peter Diamandis talks about is demonetizing electronic devices so that there's a device in every child's hand. And, we know that technology can be addictive, so we have to create this balance between the two. But when we look at what's happened in the last few months and look at a country like China, they were able to, when they moved to remote learning, they made the best teachers in the country available to everyone, where it used to be you had to pay a lot of money to go to this private school. I mean, when you think about the teacher shortage and this idea that now students, as we look at coming up with even hybrid models, may have access to the best out there. And that's going to help level the playing field. But as you said, Josh, that digital divide is something that we really have to figure out how to overcome.
Yeah. There are different solutions. In Taiwan, the government provides free Wi-Fi just as as one of the amenities they provide for every single person everywhere on the island. So everyone in Taiwan has access to free Wi-Fi no matter where you are, in your home, in an office, in a park. The United States is a little bigger, right? That's not really an option for us, but what are some of those things to be aware of? What are some of those things that we can do in demonetizing electronics so that they become something that just we can all have access to?
Yes, and my 2 cents, COVID-19 highlighted the inequality issue, inequalities. So we all see it in front of our own eyes. And as a education policy fellow, what we're talking about as we speak now, that connectivity and accessibility becomes a human right issue. It's basically, there is no way to put the Band-Aid on it. And I strongly believe that here in US, if we would put our mind on it, we have a means and ways and resources to really accomplish that goal. So we just need to say no more, and this is what we need. And as an engineer, I would just say 50% of the solution is the right definition of the problem. So we need to really put it on just in front of our leadership, saying, this is a human right issue. We need to provide connectivity and accessibility regardless of your zip code, if you will. That's my 2 cents.
And one thing to think about with that, I've heard some of the thought leaders talk about how the more people that come online, it really benefits businesses, because those are people who are now able to shop online, that are able to contribute to the economy in that way. So and then other people look at it from the data side, which is a whole nother issue with the pros and cons too. So lots to think about. And with that, you know, we know that this technology enables us to communicate, and the way that we communicate has changed so much just over the last decade, as we were talking about right before the webinar started, especially as our world is becoming more global all the time. So Josh, as we think about the jobs of the future, what does that mean for how we communicate and or how we train our students to be good communicators?
Well, one of the things that is going to be an interesting shift that's going to happen over the next probably 10 years, maybe 20, is that we will no longer need to be teaching people foreign language. The whole concept of learning a foreign language will be a nice to have. It will make you super cool at cocktail parties. But the reality is we'll have devices that will allow us to instantaneously, simultaneously get real-time work in that direction. So instead, we can put all of our focus instead on just core communication skills and less on these sort of just individual language skills. And I think you'll find more of those kinds of things happening as we talk about preparing for this global workforce, where we just need to focus more on the skills around accepting of others, like being willing to try and understand other cultures rather than try and dominate. An opportunity to just focus on understanding communication strategies and styles and approaches versus here's how you would communicate to somebody culturally over here. And I think those skills are going to be critically important as we head into that global workforce, but it's also going to have to be, I mean this in the best way possible. I absolutely love the United States of America. We are the greatest country on the face of the planet. There's no question. I've got a chance to travel around. It's fantastic. Unfortunately, we do sometimes have an ego around that, and that makes it difficult for us sometimes to work with folks from other parts of the world who may not like us chanting USA all the time. And so I think one of the things we have to do globally is have a little bit of humility for ourselves, and that'll allow us to better participate in this global sense.
Yeah, and if I may add, Rachel, just 2 words. Since I have experience leading the education and training in the workforce when I was working at one of the largest technological corporations here in US. So when we welcome our new employees, we realize they need additional training on teamwork skills. So we provided them teamwork skills training, and it was a must-attend training. So, and as a NASA educator, I like the best system that is a NASA 4D system, how to train it. So we also trained our employees on intercultural communication. So it was a little gap for those who came, who we hire from K-12 education, from different educational institutions. We trained on the specifics of how to collaborate, what it really means. Not just let's be collaborators, but what it really means at the workplace. How you put this in numbers and how you assess it. If there is a way to do it, and the answer is yes, and you need to really look into this skills from a workforce training perspective. And creativity and adaptability. So that's something, and again, in addition to efforts in CTE and K-12, I think the way how workforce defining it and how workforce managing it and provide training, it's something that I would encourage educators to learn more about.
To that point, I think that's great. Thank you, Larissa. Really, when you look at the quadrant of the most in-demand, hardest to find skills of the future, consistently across the board, they are creative thinking and problem solving. What are we teaching in CTE? Creative thinking and problem solving. But we never clearly do a skills analysis. We never talk about that element of what we do. What we need to focus on as we talk about where we go globally is how do we quantify, how do we measure, how do we certify skill development and not just credentials and degrees.
Yes, that's what we figured out, that the education is really a little bit lagging behind in that. So in my capacity as a corporate manager, we assessed those skills and we provided the training to fill those gaps.
You know, and I also want to throw in there too, I think back to what Josh said earlier about this human element piece. And I think it's just important for us to remember to teach kids, our students in our classrooms, that whether it's in, you know, K-12, post-secondary, that there's a human on the other side of that screen. Sometimes when we're not face-to-face, eyeball to eyeball, that communication changes. And I think that that human element is an important piece too, as we're teaching them all of these different global collaboration pieces and communication skills. And Larissa, I know that this is the world that you live in and you have a really good pulse on this. What do you see as the most disruptive technology that will impact the future? And this could be workplace, education, or both combined.
Sure. I will try to be short because this is a subject, a topic that we can discuss hours and hours. But the most disruptive technologies, you probably heard most of them. It's artificial intelligence, it's deep learning, machine learning, it's quantum computing. And quantum computing, I would like to repeat because this is something that we not quite often talk in outside of engineering circles. This is completely a different principle of computing, and all the computers that we use now will be outdated pretty soon because we're moving away from binary system and we're moving to computing based on quantum.
Thank you for just blowing my mind, Larissa. Thank you.
And a couple more, it's digital twinning. And if you don't know, just Google. It's just really will probably blow your mind as well. It's probably, I'm not sure if you heard that word, but it's a phygital spaces. It's a new terminology, phygital spaces. It's basically human to human to technology. Is just basically we're sharing that space, and there is a new technology how we share that space with AI-based devices. So smart buildings and data wallets, those are the last one I probably will mention, although the list go on and on. But if you would remember, I would like to, if something that I would outline in 2 words, it's probably artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning, and quantum computing.
And Larissa, do you mind throwing those terms in that you mentioned Googling, throwing those in the chat for folks, or maybe even if you have a link handy? I'm interested. I'm like, ooh, I just learned something new.
Sure, absolutely.
All right.
The only quantum I know is like that 90s TV show. That's the only quantum anything I ever learned.
Yeah, and for those of you who think it's something like 30 years in away, it's not. The quantum computing is working right here in Cambridge and IBM and Google. So, and this is, yeah, just mind blowing. We're not going to just one sentence to add. So the companies are looking for hiring programmers and coders. They don't want to already hire someone who've been even PhD in computer science who've been trained on binary system. So they need someone who can program in quantum. And for those of you who don't know the mechanics of it, quantum versus binary is a two different principle of technology. So I sign up for another webinar that Rachel is putting together in the future. So I'm sure we will spend some time talking about the specifics. I'll type it in chat.
I think to that point, as Larissa's talking about technology and amazing firms up in her neck of the woods, I think I would be remiss if we didn't talk about Boston Dynamics and the work they're doing around robotics and combining it with AI. And again, talking about impacts of COVID and some of those kinds of things. I mean, the irony of COVID is it exposed our economy would not have worked if we didn't have grocery store clerks, right? If we didn't have people putting in toilet paper every day, there would have been riots, right? We had to have somebody get it from point A to point B to get on the shelves. But does that have to be a person? And if we're in an environment where people could be getting sick or they're worried about hours, these kind of things, that's what's going to happen in the future. Is we're going to have more and more of those positions taken over by robotics because it's safer, it's easier, they don't complain, and they don't steal stuff.
Excellent points. And that's, you know, when I also was doing some research this morning about how virtual reality is going to play a role as well when you think about moving to these remote areas. And I've actually been working with an organization that's creating a new school, a new concept that is going to be launching in the fall. And they're going to, every student will have a headset, so that even if they're not able to be in person collaborating, they're going to be able to come together in this virtual environment and do experiments and projects together with kids from different parts of the world. And that's pretty phenomenal to think about how we can leverage some of these technologies to really help during this time when we're seeing education recreate itself, which that actually brings me to the next question. We're talking about the workplace, and we know that students are going to be inventing this future workplace. So what do you see as the changes that need to occur in our education system? We've seen a system that's painfully slow to transform suddenly have to change basically almost overnight. What changes need to occur in our education system in order to ensure that students are equipped for this future? Josh.
I will preface this, unlike all the rest of the awesome people on here, I am not an educator. I do not have the pleasure of being in a classroom, but I do get to see the best around the country, and I get to see some different things. If there's one thing that we're taking from this, it's not necessarily virtual learning. It's flexibility. It's adaptability. It's figuring out, right? The best teachers in every discipline were flexible. They were adaptable. They figured out how to make it work. And that mindset is what we're going to need to take back in order to improve education. All right, the problem is this forced us to be flexible because we had no other choice. Now that we have a choice moving forward, can we apply those same learning concepts, that same idea, and create change even when it's not required? I think that's going to be the key thing we have to do moving forward.
Sure, and if I have a moment to add a few sentences towards that, is that okay?
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Sure. So as education policy fellow, keep bringing this up, but I made myself responsible as a professional engineer who switched to career technical education and K-12 education. I went back to school and studied, and I'm really taking my hat off to all educators. So because it's one of the most important jobs ever. So I would just quote from my professor, and this is like a Bible in educational system reforms. He unfortunately passed away this January, Professor Clayton Christensen from Harvard University. So he was one of the leading experts in that, in disruptive technologies in different areas. So I just read the very quick quote from our education policy Bible, so to speak. So the results of these four factors: technological improvement that make learning more engaging, research advances that enable the design of student-centric software appropriate to each individual learner, the looming teacher shortages, and cost pressure, is that the 10 years from publication of this book, and it was published in 2016, online student-centric learning will account for 50% of the seat miles in the US secondary schools. Given the current trajectory of substitution, about 80% of courses taken in 2024 will be taught online in a student-centric way. And if you don't know what the terminology of student-centric way really means, I'm sure you know the foundations of it, but if you would like to, maybe someday we will spend more time talking about this. And remember the name, Professor Clayton Christensen, if you would like to dive into the education policy reform, the strategic planning, and basically the ideas that those who are in charge of reforming our educational system, who I hope they're learning from the best of the best and bring it back to schools. So yeah, so online and student-centric, that's basically the foundation of this. And do we like it or not, that's what is going to happen. It's change never easy, but if you are consider yourself a leader, you will find a way to participate and lead the way rather than just wait until somebody else will do it. So, and hats off to all of you who are doing it day in and day out. I know, again, I know practically all of you. I don't know, I don't have a luxury to know all of you, but I'm sure you do it in your own way in your own school districts.
Yeah. Well, and to add on to that, to what Rachel said very early on, right? The example in China where they're having their best teachers accessible to more and more students, right? One of the big challenges we have, especially in rural school districts and smaller school districts, right? We just don't necessarily have the resources to hire teachers, in particular for a lot of these CTE programs, because they're more expensive, right? It just costs more money. We can't afford to have, another teacher for this or that. If we could do online, right, a student-centric online version where they can get all that learning from North Dakota and be living in South Carolina, that's the future of education, right? Where we don't have to have our students' success determined by how successful a teacher is in their community, because they'll have the opportunity, that student-centric approach, to learn at their pace from their perfect teacher anywhere in the country or maybe the world.
Yeah, and I strongly believe that leadership is really in the career technical education. To be honest with you, this is something that we all hope for and look up to. It's challenging, I know, and it's not easy to do. But I see, as I studied education in all 50 states in the United States, I see the hope is that, and I see this as a reality. Educators like you are leading the change. You are in a driving seat, and the initiatives and the leadership comes from career technical education, and everyone else will follow.
Well, and with that, we know that we're able to control a certain amount within just the school system, but what role do parents and society play in ensuring that the learning spaces of today are keeping up with these advances in the world around us? What are your thoughts on that?
I'll pass that one off to Larissa.
No, that's a somewhat easy answer, so to speak. There is no way around it. Let's just say how it is. And we already touched upon that in the beginning of our discussion. So parents and society, they have no other choice but must be more proactive. Must be proactive in learning what these disruptive changes are. And they must have at least basic understanding of foundations of those disruptive changes. And they must demand from our leaders to really bring these changes into the learning spaces and make our leaders accountable. And quite frankly, be more accountable themselves. It's not like you shipped your child to whatever school it is and say, do whatever. Parents have a role to play, and the more we are going deeper and deeper into this transition, parents as advocates and parents as supporters of education, and parents as learning coaches at home for their kids, they play a significant role in that process. So there is no way one group of people or another can do it alone. We are all in this together.
Yeah. To that point, Rachel, what I would say is one of my philosophies I have in life is that a lot of these opinions are pendulums, right? Where they swing all the way to one side and people are like, oh crap. And then it comes back and we swing all the way to the other side, right? So we swung the pendulum all the way to everyone has to have a 4-year academic degree. Everybody. And now we're like, oh God, that doesn't work at all. And so we're starting to come back here to the center. And at the same time that's happening, the cost of post-secondary education in traditional 4-year environments is becoming a significant barrier. The value of a 4-year traditional baccalaureate degree is becoming a challenge for the value proposition. Being away from home is becoming a problem. And more career and technical education is no longer just seen, for lack of a better term, as shop class, right? People are starting to see that career and technical education is for all spectrums. It's all sorts of different careers and it's all sorts of different places to be. And I think parents are realizing that oftentimes is a better path than a traditional 4-year school. And so I think these factors are coming together to help us all at the same time so that we can have those parents as coaches, as advocates in this program. I mean, the reality is, as Larissa was talking about, right? You could have a PhD in computing, but more and more people are going to want to hire somebody who maybe just got done with a 6-month coding boot camp, who know the basics and then can be molded to your particular style or approach or what you need to do. And that's more valuable than having your 3rd degree. No offense to doctorates out there.
Well, and Josh, I'm glad you mentioned that because in February, I was doing a keynote in Roanoke, Virginia, and a family asked me to go to dinner with them that evening. And they had their high school son with them. And they wanted me to tell their son, they were concerned because their son wasn't interested in going to college and wanted me to tell their son why he needed to go to college. And I thought, oh, you're asking the wrong
woman.
And I started exploring some of his interests. And he loves video games. He loves technology. He loves, he's learning how to code. And so I explained to him there's some other options, and you could just see the parents looking like, oh, we invited the wrong person to dinner tonight. Now, before we get to our final question of the webinar, I do see a question from Annie Dolan-Niles. Can the presenters describe what student-centric online learning looks like in hands-on, skill-focused CTE classrooms?
I have my answer, Melissa, but yours is probably like technical and accurate and not just
No, go ahead. Go ahead. We have this really nice combination of your passion and my diving into more official definitions. Go ahead.
So what I look at student-centric in this space is identifying your skill level, kind of your educational needs, your aptitude, and finding then a teacher or a program that fits in that space. Whereas today, if you want to get into a program, you have to fit your style to meet whatever the program is at your school to make it work. If we're in this digital world where we have lots of options and lots of places, instead, you get to choose the system that works best for you, where it's built around you and your needs, or at least you fit into there better than you fitting into whatever the program is that's in your local community. That's how I look at it.
Yeah, great. And I would like to add, as I said, I am more like a formal definition of all of this. First
On
of
page
all,
32B.
appreciate it to me. I would like to make sure I express this before the webinar will end, that based on all my formal and informal studies and my experience working with many schools in the U.S. in K-12 and career technical education, I strongly believe, and I talk openly about this in K-12 arena, that who is in a driver's seat, who have a capacity, and who is leading the way is career technical educators. And if you would like to learn more about why I feel that way, we can discuss it sometime later on, not today, but whenever Rachel will gather all of us together. But there is a reason why it's happening, and you probably know more about this than at least any of my group. But again, I strongly believe that this change in bringing disruptive technology will be led by career technical educators. And the K-12 and academics will follow. So answering the question, how it's defined in page 32B, student-centric learning has been defined most simply as an approach to learning in which learners choose not only what to study, but also how to study and why that topic might be of interest. So that's the official definition from my Harvard University textbook that I have to pass the test as I get my different certificates and diplomas. So why it sometimes confuses the career technical educators, because they see a huge challenge at this time, how to really bring hands-on via online. You can't really simply do it. However, you meaning CTE world and CTE educators, you're ahead of the game, but very fortunate that the technology will be soon available for CTE educators and students. I wish it would happen sooner rather than later. But Rachel mentioned the virtual and augmented reality. So this will be, if you would have an opportunity to visit labs, or if I would have couple more hours to really talk about this in details and show you the examples, it would be mind-blowing. So there is a technology that is being developed as we speak by my engineering colleagues that would provide you a perfect hands-on experience online, virtually. And this is something that would be really, truly disruptive. So, and that's why I feel that the request for that technology comes from career technical educators, and I feel academics will follow. So again, it's Rachel who is so masterfully put together all these fantastic opportunities for you, and if down the road you would like to discuss it in more details, I would be happy to participate and contribute.
You know, and I agree, having the, well, especially as it becomes less cost prohibitive for, say, Oculus or Rec Room, some of these spaces where they can collaborate. But I mean, until then, there are some things that you can do, even having kids put together their own maker space. And I created one recently for an online workshop where it was things that most people would throw away. It's like paper towel rolls, little containers, pieces of cloth, the cotton from a vitamin container, you know, just stuff that everyone can have a totally different looking maker space, but they're creating things from home and learning how to be creative and doing some hands-on work. But there's Tisha Richmond has her website is Make Learning Magical, but she put together a whole series of podcasts interviewing CTE educators over the last few months on how to create a hands-on learning environment when you're doing online learning. So I definitely recommend checking that out as well for more resources.
To that point, I think regardless of whether or not it's a do-it-yourself makerspace or it's an augmented or virtual reality space, you know, those things are nice and cool, but the real advantage that CTE has over any academic subject is context. That's the secret sauce, right? Our students understand why, right? They know how to apply it. They get a sense of what this means and how it will help them. And that's why our CTE students graduate at higher rates, right? That's why they have you know, more successful outcomes, because their learning has that context. And I think that's the hardest part in distance learning is we can't lose that part, because that's really what makes what we do special.
And for anyone, there was a webinar that we did a couple of months ago that we had Kevin Fleming on, who wasn't able to join us today, but he was sharing how in Norco community colleges in California that they're actually sending kits to people's homes. And I know that for most K-12 educators that we're not there yet, but that may be something to look at in the future, is how can we make sure that kids are getting these kits? We also have to ensure that safety piece. We've seen lots of great examples of people having kids cut family members' hair, cooking at home with Cook With What You've Got, doing little fixing toilets and doing these projects. But there are so many factors that we're wrapping our heads around with as far as how to make sure that kids are also safe, and thinking about liability pieces that may play into that as well. So I think that, you know, we all have a lot to learn and continue growing. And that's why having platforms like this to learn together can be really helpful.
Yeah.
All right. And then our final question, and let's start with you, Josh, on this one, is what advice do you have for CTE leaders who are trying to disrupt the status quo?
Embrace your role as an outsider, right? I think one of the biggest challenges that we have in CareerTechEd, regardless whether it's secondary or post-secondary, is this inferiority complex that we've kind of developed, that like we're not as good as academic folks, or we're not really teachers, or we're this or that or the other. And so we've kind of developed this sort of underdog mindset. And what I would say is embrace that, right? Because we're outsiders, because we don't always play by the rules, because we don't have to fit the mold, take advantage of that. And really find ways to be like, we're different. We don't have to be like you, right? It's great that you're stuck there in your classroom and you're stuck. We're just going to do something different because that's just what we do. And really embrace that spirit of independence and freedom, because I think that's what's going to be really key for us moving forward in the future to help develop whatever those skills are, whatever the jobs are. It's going to be that mindset that we're going to need.
Yes, I'm happy to add to this, if I may. I was going to go along with what George just described so masterfully, but I would add my specific practical advice would be, if you can, bring a pilot program in your school or in your school district on one of the disruptive technology. I would start from artificial intelligence, and really make sure that you have at least one pilot program in your career technical school. It could be AI, artificial intelligence, electrical shop, or it could be AI in HVAC. It could be AI in carpentry. It could be artificial intelligence in cosmetology. It could be AI in health, in automotive technology and collision. It could be AI in culinary, in AI in metal fabrication, and I can go on and on. So basically think about having at least one pilot program in your CTE school, put artificial intelligence and blank, and fill that blank with one of the shops that you would like devoted to. And my ask for you not to start from, it's easy to really go for that route, say AI in computer design, or one of your programs that probably ahead of the game in terms of computer academics, learning things of that. So I would like to encourage you starting from, it will do very good for your whole school district if you would start AI in cosmetology, AI in electrical, or something not computer oriented or computer design, because that would be the best illustration for you how those disruptive technology are coming full force into the shops that might not be connected in parents' mind or your mind. It might be unusual, but I would like to really ask you to really put your leadership hat on and not to be afraid of it. And if you need advice, you can always outreach to Rachel, and I'm happy to help to talk about these issues. Basically, I have to, this big button, ask me, I know how. And also a couple more points, and hopefully it will serve, it will be helpful to some of you. So make sure it's not only AI in electrical or AI in cosmetology or AI in something, but make sure that that pilot program is from the start, from get-go, it's a collaborative program. And it has online collaboration with either another CTE school in another state. And I would like to encourage you to collaborate with states with different parts of the country, with different sort of cultural aspects. Like if you are from north, collaborate with southern states. If you are from, and vice versa. So make sure that it's not only virtual, you might want to add global virtual. That's what we do in Global STEM Classroom. So your instructors will be practicing co-teaching online, and your students will be learning how to learn online in a collaborative atmosphere, in multicultural atmosphere, working on career technical specific projects, in multidisciplinary projects. And a couple very short points in 30 seconds or less. So don't shy away taking, upgrading your own knowledge. Just really take 1 or 2 courses. And if it's the whole full-scale course at Harvard or MIT is too much for you, outreach to Rachel, and really the professional societies provide professional development that really saves your time, and it can be done online, and sign up for my workshops, if you will. Another than very last point, if you don't know where to start, and if you feel that you probably need to really put your thinking hat on it first, don't shy away from forming a task force or a committee some sort in your school or school district, or start a discussion group, whatever it is that is more neutral in sort of take less time. Really don't struggle alone. Really form your book club group, whatever it is that you feel can fit into your schedule, and ask for help from your professional societies, from your colleagues. Don't think that struggling alone is going to really get you out of this. So we all have the same questions in our mind, and we can help each other to really move forward. With that, back to you, Rachel.
Thank you so much. And I am so, go ahead, Josh.
I was just going to add to that, to Larissa's idea of kind of that group. Don't be afraid to connect with your local business partners. You know, we talk about disruptive technologies with AI and these things. You could do even a partnership with AI and a local business and create, you know, these connections in that way. Again, one of the strengths that we have is we're connected to the real world. So, you know, take advantage of those business partnerships and those advisory councils, as well as we're talking about kind of what the next steps are, because they may know some more things that are coming down the pike that we don't know.
Yeah, and 10 seconds addition to Josh, a very important point. Yes, I had the privilege to work for 4 or 5 years at one of the excellent CTE schools in Massachusetts, and we had great experience collaborating with NASA and students from electrical shop. They worked together online with their Russian counterparts in northern, in near Arctic Circle, and they
Marshall?
work with, and yeah, and they fix toilets in International Space Station. So it can be done. It's challenging yet rewarding. So you can do it. And again, my last word is, I just really amazed of the amount of knowledge and expertise and leadership and passion. I actually really feel that the disruptive innovations in education will be led by career technical educators. So hats off to you.
Wow, and that is such a great way to wrap it up. Thank you so much. I am so appreciative of both Larissa and Josh for being with us today and for sharing so much, and for all of our guests for joining in for our last webinar of the school year. And I look forward to see you guys in August. Again, if I could ask my panelists, if you don't, Josh and Larissa, if you don't mind sharing your contact information in the chat. And then I'll link the chat notes in the YouTube channel, which I shared over in the site as well. So feel free to share out our YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe. And if any of our guests are interested in being on a future podcast or webinar, please, we're always looking for new guests. So please reach out to me. And all you have to do is respond to one of those newsletters that you receive from NCLA, and I'll get your information and send you a link to sign up. Have a blessed summer. If I can ask Josh and Larissa to stay on for a moment, and to everyone else, thanks again. And we look forward to seeing you in August.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Rachel.